Okay, so today we're going to look at one or two of the texts that are inside of the chapter 7 with that's all about drawing inferences. So I pulled up my textbook here, and if you, oops, if you look in this chapter, we've got a short story, and it is titled, let me quick mark, oops, James here. Go back to the book. So the short story is called A Dip in the Pool. And then we have religion, piece about religion, and that's called Religion Today. And then the third selection is a personal narrative, and that one is called Fear the College Years. So which one do you guys want to start with?
Fear the college years.
Fear the College Years? Okay. So let me see if I can make this a little larger and I'll make this smaller. There we go. That's not letting me. Oh, there we go. Okay. I don't know how to close this. Maybe I can do it that way. There we go. Okay, so this one is a personal narrative and it's called Fear the College Years. And it starts on page 398. So if you have a book and you want to get it on your own book, open your own book and find it, that's the page that it's on. And I'll give you guys a second to do that. And then once you find that page, the first thing you always do is the previewing. So you want to look, just kind of look through the article, get a sense of what it might be about. So it starts down here. So we've got an author. So you want to read this part. And then we have the title. We would definitely look at that and try to think about what that might be about. Maybe read this first line here. And then, of course, any text that's different. So this is in a box, so we would read that. Why was Corcoran afraid of college? And then we notice there's some italics here, and that looks like it's the person's internal thoughts. So it's not, since it's kind of part of dialogue, only it's the internal thoughts instead of what they actually say out loud. Maybe we don't need to read that. We'll figure that out. Then we have another box. What do people think of illiterates? And we have another box. How was he able to get through elementary school undetected? And then we have an image. And under it, it says John Corcoran, who was unable to read until age 48, is committed to fighting adult illiteracy in the United States. And we have another box. Why was he able to get through these classes? And we don't really have any headings or subheadings in this article, but we do have this note here, which we might read. It's in italics and in brackets. Using schemes like these, John Corcoran managed to graduate from college. He married and pursued successful careers as a high school mathematics teacher, coach, and real estate investor. and he fooled everyone except his 3-year-old daughter. She knew her dad wasn't really reading her new bedtime story. At the age of 48, John Corcoran finally summoned enough courage to seek help for his reading disability. Then we have another box with a question to consider. Why did Corcoran wear a suit and tie? And then we have another bracket commenting on what the text said. Today, Corcoran is a respected spokesperson for adult literacy programs and founder of the John Corcoran Foundation, Inc., Advocacy for Literates. Muhammad. So we are on page 402 of your textbook. We're reading, um, I think it's the personal narrative, yeah. And it's called Fear the College Years, right here. And right now we're just previewing, so we just kind of previewed the text a little bit. But we want to also look at the vocabulary and try to think of anything we already know about what this is about. So we understand the topic is illiteracy and one man's personal story about how he got through life not being able to read up until the age of 48. So activate schemata. Do you know someone who cannot read? How would being illiterate affect a person's life? It's probably rarer today than it was like when I was growing up. But does anybody have anything they want to share? Any stories? Okay, so just kind of think about that. Try to draw to mind anybody, or maybe somebody that could read but had struggled with it a bit as an adult or even as a child. And then we'll establish a purpose for reading. Could somebody who couldn't read graduate from high school and college and become a teacher? That's the most astounding part. Read to find out about the experiences of John Corcoran, a teacher who couldn't read. So that's our purpose for reading, is to find out about his experiences. So we have some words that we'll encounter in this text intermittently. So that's not continuously, but from time to time, sort of. If you look at the definition here, it's at irregular intervals, not continuously or steadily. Competence is someone's ability to do something. The definition is the ability to do something successfully or efficiently. Masquerade is to pretend, right? A false show or pretense. The wearing of a disguise could be an actual physical disguise, but could also just be pretending to be something other than what one is. Illiterates, people who cannot read, unable to read or write. Adept has to do with being skillful. Oh, I didn't want to copy. A very skilled or proficient at something. Covert is sort of secretive, undercover, not openly acknowledged or displayed, secret, furtive. Cunning is to kind of use tricks to get where you need to be. Having or showing skill in achieving one's ends by deceit or evasion. A ploy is similar to that. It's a trick that you would use. A cunning plan or action designed to turn a situation to one's own advantage. And subterfuge is pretty much the same thing. Deceit used in order to achieve one's goal. So these words all are sort of the same sense. Inconspicuous is kind of like where you don't stand out. You try to do something without anybody noticing you. Not clearly visible or attracting attention. So we did the predict part. While we read, we want to do these: picture, relate, monitor, correct. And usually with a second reading, you would annotate, and you could take notes if you don't have a way to annotate. So just try to visualize what we're reading. See, what does that look like? Make it come to life in your mind's eye. Find ways that you can relate to it. Remember, we talked about text to self of your own life or people you know in your life, text to text, another story that you might have read like that, text to world, stuff going on in the world that is related to what you're reading. Monitor means pay attention to when you don't understand something and your comprehension breaks down and try to find ways to correct it. And annotate is to take notes, can highlight, mark, write in the margins, take notes on a separate piece of paper. So I'm going to let you guys read and then we'll answer some questions, or um, I'll have you guys answer questions and then we'll discuss. So if somebody doesn't have a book yet, I'll just kind of move as I think, at the speed I think you need. And if you find I'm going too fast or too slow, you can let me know. But if you have your own book, you can certainly read on your own. So if you're done reading, you can move on and move through these steps. Is there anyone still reading?
I'm okay now.
So you might at this point do a sort of review of what the text said. So you could go back and use the sections to kind of guide you. So we start off and it's around the time when he's graduating high school, and he managed to get a high school diploma without being able to read, and then considers college, but thinks that that's too difficult, and then um, decides to go for it, right? Talks about how he was raised, right? He says his mother always just assumed in her the way she spoke that he would be going to college, that education was important to the family, especially his father. Didn't let them use any swear words or slang. And then he saw a college diploma as being like a sort of leg up, right? And realized he wanted to go, he should go. And then he kind of talks about how hard life is for someone who has a reading disability. They're not as happy as other children. And he says he was full of anxiety, always worried that someone would find out and he'd be humiliated. But he became really good at hiding it. And he knew all the tricks and all the strategies, things to do to achieve that. And he realized he could get people to help him as well. And here in this paragraph, he talks about superficial dignity and that no one discovered that he needed some help with reading. So it's almost like a little bit of criticism for the schools. And but because he masked it, it's kind of difficult. And he cheated a lot. Then he talks about going to junior college, which is like a 2-year college, when he was out in California and he had a girlfriend named Mildred, and he doesn't know if they ended up in the same place because one followed the other. But he had her as a girlfriend and she helped him and she would type his papers. He would tell her what to write. And she still didn't know, he thinks, that he couldn't write or read. He thinks that she just did it because she loved him. And so then he got offered a scholarship to play basketball for a college in Texas, and he decided to take it. It looks like he's a tall man, so he says he could dunk a ball. And then he ends up dating someone new, and that person starts to help him. But I guess he doesn't start to talk about that yet. He's talking about how his scholastic career, it was a criminal one, and he mentions things that he had to do, right, to achieve the degree to pass. And let's see. He talks about how hard it is. I have a little bit of experience with that because I lived in Japan for 5 years and I didn't read or speak Japanese when I first went. So it was really like if you went to the grocery store, it was really hard to know what you were buying. And there were many times when I thought I was buying milk and I got home and it was yogurt, that sort of thing. So he talks about that a little bit. And then he talks about his new girlfriend. Mildred was left behind when he met a beauty queen, and he would order whatever she was ordering so that she wouldn't know that he couldn't read the menu. Talks about that, right? And then he goes into making a comparison to what he was doing to the idea of cat burglars, which were popular during that time. And there was a movie called To Catch a Thief. And tells some examples of that, like when he would break into professors' offices and steal the tests and quizzes. And one time he couldn't open the cabinet, so he and somebody else like went in and got the cabinet out of there and brought it to someone who could open it and then brought it back without being caught. Let's see. And one time, um, a lot of history professors would give blue book tests, and I don't know if they still have them, but um, I have taken them. You would have to bring your own little composition book. It was like a mini one, and they were called blue books. And you'd be given some essay questions, and you had to write essays in those books, and that was your test. So he talked about how there was a guy who liked his sister, so he took the book, brought two books, two blue books, and he put one out the window after he wrote the test questions on inside the essay question prompts, put it out the window, and this guy wrote his essays and he would pretend to write until he got the book back and turned in that. And then he talks about seeing, finally when he was 48 years old, seeing the ad for a adult literacy program. And he got information and attended that. And he makes a point of saying that he dressed in a suit. I think I might have passed it somewhere to go there. He looked very fancy, and it was outside of his town, probably, so no one would recognize him. And then he ends with, I didn't hear a voice from heaven, but as I walked in the door, 48 years old, frustrated, maybe even desperate, it was the beginning of my new life and the birth of a miracle. Because he talked about how there were literate people were different people than non-literate people. So he could become a new person, kind of say. So if you were going to summarize that, you would say, what is the whole thing about and what are the main points? Does anybody want to take a crack at that? So what is this whole thing about?
Him hiding the fact that he couldn't read.
Right. And then finally getting to read. And what are the main points he uses to show what that's like? What are the main things he talks about?
Like trying to like he was just basically trying to lie his way out, but then he kind of found a solution.
Yeah, so he hit it is one of the points, and then he explains how he achieved that, which would be cheating, um, avoiding situations where he had to read, and having girlfriends that helped him, right? And he got into college through a basketball scholarship, so that might have been one. And maybe another main point would be about how important college was to his family. So it wasn't that he didn't have a family who helped, who had books in their house and things like that. It was just that he had a disability and no one ever discovered it. Not his parents, not his teachers in school because he hid it so well. Excellent work. So let's answer these questions somewhere. So we did the recall part. Kokorin uses many forms of figurative language throughout the section. So we're going to talk about figurative language when we study the novel, but figurative language, and we talked about it in one of these chapters too, or we're going to. I forget if we already did. But it's basically language that is not taken literally. So Figurative language would be a simile. Um, uh, Her dress was like a curtain blowing in the wind with through an open window or something, like if it was had a lot of motion to it. That's a horrible simile. I just couldn't think of anything except I'm looking at a curtain. Um, and a metaphor would be her dress was a window curtain with wind blowing on it. So you say the one thing is directly the other. Then you have personification, where you give inanimate objects human-like qualities. So, um, let's say the person wearing the dress doesn't is it's a very long dress and you can't see the feet. The dress glided across the floor as though it were a living thing. And then with hyperbole, you over exaggerate. So, the fabric made to make her dress could cover the house 5 times, saying there was a lot of fabric involved as an exaggeration. So we also talked about irony, where you say the opposite of what is true, is a form of figurative language as well. So there's not much fabric in that dress when there clearly is. And what am I missing? I'm missing something else. Talked about verbal irony, personification. Oh, we didn't talk about an understatement, which is the opposite of a hyperbole, the opposite of over exaggerating. So you would understate what it was. And that's kind of like the verbal irony example I gave, where I said that there wasn't much fabric. So, oh, this old thing, there's not much fabric to it. I just used a small piece of fabric to make it. That's an understatement. So let's look through and see if you can find anything. I just went to any screen. You can look anywhere in your book and read until you can find some form of language that is not meant to be taken literally. So I see one in the first paragraph that I have on the screen here toward the end. See if anyone can find it. There's also one in the first sentence of the second paragraph. There's a few examples of figurative language in that second paragraph. Has anyone found any yet? Let's take a look at it's like being blind in a strange room without the benefit of touch. Now you have to know what the program it's is referring to, so you have to go back and look at the previous sentence. No one can understand the struggle within the soul of an illiterate unless he attempts to lead a life without being sure of words on a bottle, a menu, a street sign, a newspaper, a bill, a legal document, or a letter. So, um, the soul of an illiterate is what it's is, or being illiterate is like being blind in a strange room without the benefit of touch. So Is it really being blind in a strange room without the benefit of touch? No, that's not actually what it is. It's a comparison, right, to something else. So that it makes it a simile because of the word like. It is like this other thing. Being illiterate is like this. It's not exactly that, but it's like that. And that is a form of figurative language. If we go to this one, Mildred became a dim chapter in my book of romance as I began to date one of the smartest girls in school. So here we have a couple of metaphors. Metaphor is where you make a comparison to something else, but you say the one thing is the other. So Mildred um, is, because she became a dim chapter, right? So um, comparing a human being to a chapter in a book. And the book is Book of Romance, right? So his romantic moments in his life, he's comparing to a book as well. So we have two different comparisons going on in there. Let's see. I became very adept at dodging and ducking the printed word. So there we have metaphors too for avoiding reading, dodging and ducking the printed word. He's not really like moving his head down and trying to duck the words on a page, right? That's a metaphor. So he's making that comparison to make it more interesting for us to read it, right? More entertaining. Most of the time, it was as natural as breathing. So that's a simile. It was as natural. So it's not saying it was natural. It's saying it was as natural. So it's kind of similar to that, right? As breathing. So it's comparing avoiding reading to breathing for him. Let's go to the next item on here. We're going to skip the writing part because we don't have time to do that right now. Um, how does Cochran use of figurative language contribute to your reading of the narrative? Does anybody want to answer that? If he didn't use any of that figurative language, what would be the difference in reading this? Think about, he's talking about
Mm.
something abstract. Go ahead. Did
Mm.
somebody want to talk?
Do you want to tell her?
Mm.
Oh, he said it wouldn't flow as well.
No, it wouldn't be as interesting either, right? It makes it more interesting, creates imagery in our minds. We can see somebody ducking or dodging, for example. We can see some of these things used in the figurative language. And also, he's talking about things that are abstract, right? And that many people have not experienced. So he's talking about things that are hard to explain. So when something's complex like that and you use something concrete and tangible and familiar to other people and you make a comparison from of one thing to the other, it helps people to understand that feeling or that sense that is abstract and hard to understand if you compare it to something that they're familiar with and that they've experienced physically, especially. So that's another thing that the use of figurative language will do for any writer or reader. So, discussion, exploration, and everyday life. The reading Fear the College Years covers the topic of literacy in America. Discuss the topic with your classmates and brainstorm ways that it has affected your everyday life. For example, how do you think someone's ability to read or not read affects the overall job market? So, what do you guys think? You could even like pull in AI. Could you pretend that you can write when you have AI to write for you? Or would that impede if you can't read what the AI is saying before you submit?
I feel like it would interfere with the law.
Okay. Anybody else want to contribute? So, like back when I was growing up, most of the people that I knew worked in factories. You didn't really need to read and write so much because you just learned a task that you repeated over and over again all day long. It was very a small task. Like one time I worked in a factory for frozen meat, and my job was to take these hamburger patties off of the conveyor belt and put them in a box until the box was full, and then put that on a pallet and then get another box. And there were just a bunch of us standing around the conveyor belt, and that's all we did for 8 hours straight. So, probably like in the past, you could get by without being able to read and write a little bit easier. Especially if you go back even further than my generation, where people literally would write an X as their signature because they couldn't read or write. It was more common, and there were more laborious tasks that people would do for money, where they would just do labor that didn't require reading and writing. And there are some jobs like that available today, but I think just to get a job might be harder than it was back then, where you just somebody had a conversation with you. Can anyone speak about that? Like, what do you have to do to get a job today?
I feel like also now it's a lot of like technology, so it would have to be involved with like reading and writing maybe. So
Yeah, like
like that would be hard to navigate if you don't know how to read.
yeah, like a lot of things are done on a computer. Computers didn't exist in, I mean, they existed in universities somewhere. When I first went to college, I took a class called Fortran, and that was in 1983. But people didn't have computers in their homes, or they didn't own a computer. No one owned a computer that I had any knowledge of. And that didn't really happen until I want to say the late 1990s, I think, is when people started to own computers, if I recall correctly. Um, so nobody had to use technology of any kind back then, really, other than maybe someone had to use a typewriter, or at some point they had electric typewriters. But even when I first went to college, we hand wrote our essays. Like we just wrote, but of course that still involves reading and writing, but there wasn't much technology going on. So, anyone else want to chime in about anything? Reading and writing? There is talk that people are graduating high school with barely being able to read today. Does anyone have any ideas about what's causing that?
It definitely has to be like ChatGPT and AI.
Yeah, we've got that because they can write your papers for you, right? There's videos, so you can learn from a video, people talking and just listening. Um, there's more technology that would make you not have to read and write as much too now compared to in the past, I think. But you still have to take tests and quizzes and things like that. So I know in the high school, people are using, I don't know what, TikTok or something, where they'll pull out their phone and they'll take a picture of the test and it gives them all the answers on there. So hope I'm not giving anybody any ideas, but that's been a thing, a problem. So you could see people getting by. There's also just the use of social media and phones in general, I think, has contributed to it. What do you guys think about that? Like, no one's reading books much anymore.
Yeah, or like if, for example, they want to read a book, they'll easily have something like play for them so they can have it read out loud for them.
Yeah. And that sometimes helps, if you're following along, you can hear it and read it at the same time, but you could also just listen, which is still communication and it still requires skills because some people can't listen either, like their attention span is too short. I would argue that's
Auditory books.
what was that?
James? Oh, the auditory books and things are a good resource.
Yeah, and it builds the ability to listen as
Hmm.
well. And it's a form of literacy because it's a skill, and a lot of people don't have that skill to maintain attention on listening as well. I mean, maybe some people believe that reading is going to go away now that we have technology. And there's talk of a chip that can go in the brain where you wouldn't need to even speak, right? You could communicate with somebody else that way. And even like instead of having to do something on your phone, it would automatically be done based on your thoughts. What are your thoughts about that? I think it was Elon Musk invented this some type of neuro chip or something. I don't know exactly a lot about it, but I've heard about it. Anybody have any thoughts about that? Let's move on then and answer some questions here. So this one's a true false situation. The first question is when Corcoran's father used the term King's English, he meant correct formal English. Is that true or false?
True.
Okay. Corcoran found that junior college class or Corcoran found the junior college classes easy. That one's sort of tricky, right?
I'd say false.
He had help, right? So would he have thought it was easy without his girlfriend who was doing all the dictating? You might say true because he had that resource. He didn't have to write. He could listen and he could dictate what he wanted to say in a paper and someone would type it for him. So on that level, you could say it's true. But you could also say without that, it would have been very hard for him. Corcoran stole test answers from a college teacher only one time, true or false?
False.
False. It's multiple times. Corcoran was caught and arrested for breaking into a faculty office.
False.
False. Or he never got caught, right? Corcoran believed that being able to read would change his life.
True.
True, which is why he
Can you
wanted
speak
to.
it louder? Okay, true.
True. Okay. Okay, so check your comprehension. First one, it has to do with the main idea of the whole piece. Which one do you think best explains the main idea? Being unable to read is a huge obstacle to success in modern society. That's A. B, although he is not proud of how he did it, John Corcoran managed to graduate from college despite being unable to read. Eventually, he faced his disability and sought help. Or C, John Corcoran stole tests from teachers' files and enlisted his friends to help him pass exams. D, John Corcoran is ashamed of what he did to cover up his reading disability and to graduate from high school and college. So remember,
Good.
the main idea has to be what the whole thing's about. So go
That's
ahead. What do
good.
you guys think?
Begin.
B?
Hmm.
Yep, B is correct because it covers everything that we talked about. Some of these other things were certainly in there, but that's not what the entire thing is about. So this is detail. So it's different than a main idea, right? It's a detail that supports the main idea. Kokorin received a scholarship to attend which college? Do you remember?
The C.
He did attend two junior colleges, which are like community colleges, but he didn't get the scholarship until it was a four-year college. And that was,
A.
yes, A, the Texas Western. But you're right, he did attend two community colleges. So, um, yeah, but he didn't get the basketball scholarship until then. Inference. So this is a literal question where you can go back and read and find the exact answer. But this one is not. You cannot go back and find the exact answer. You have to draw your own conclusion, which is also called an inference. So you do that by taking what the text says and what you know and trying to make an educated guess. Details in the selection suggest that Kokorin's college scholarship was to play football is A, an academic scholarship is B, to play basketball is C, for having excellent high school grades is D.
C.
C is correct, to play basketball, because he talked about how he could dunk a ball, and because of that, he got a scholarship. So um, that would make you think that it was a basketball scholarship. So the next one is a main idea question, but it's talking about just a paragraph. What is the main idea of the third paragraph? So if we go back here real fast. Um, if they're calling this a paragraph and this, that would make this the paragraph. I thought I can't let my family down. Let's see, though, if that's indeed what they mean. Cochran's father taught school off and on for 40 years was A. B, a college degree is still critical to success. C, Cochran's parents believed that a college education was essential. And D, Cochran's mother did not attend college. So this must be the paragraph about his family's beliefs about literacy and education, which would be up there. It's this paragraph. So there must be another one before. Oh, there is. It's here. One, two, three. Sorry, my mistake. My parents never considered that I wouldn't go to college. Mother would pepper her conversation with, when you go to college. And my dad had degrees or college credits from six different institutions of higher learning and read books like a kid eats popcorn. There's another simile, by the way. Whole handfuls at a time. He taught school intermittently for 40 years to support his family. He insisted that we speak the King's English, which meant no slang or swearing. Of course, his son would go to college. Education was important to him, as was natural curiosity, athletics, and hard work. So, what's the main idea of that whole paragraph? Let's go back. A is Kokorin's father taught school off and on for 40 years. B, a college degree is still critical to success. C, Kokorin's parents believe that a college education was essential. Or D, Kokorin's mother did not attend college.
C.
C is correct. That's what the whole paragraph is he's stressing how important college was to his parents. So the next question is asking us to draw an inference. So again, we can't find the exact answer in the text. We have to take what the text says and make an educated guess. So from the article, readers can infer that A, Kokorin had difficulty in mathematics. B, Kokorin could have learned to read but didn't try. C, Corcoran was not disturbed by his inability to read, or D, Corcoran was skilled in areas other than reading.
D.
D. Yes. So if we look at A, he became a math teacher, so he couldn't have had difficulty with math. B, he claimed that he had a disability, that he told us he had a disability, so it probably wasn't that he didn't try, but that he couldn't. And then C, he was not disturbed by his inability to read is false because he talked about how much anxiety he had and how hard it was that he had to work hard to keep it hidden. And then we can say D was correct because we knew that he could play basketball, we knew that he could do math well, and he was also skilled at keeping it secret from everybody what he was doing. He could climb and scale walls to break into professors' offices. So he was smart in other ways, even if some of them were not exactly couth, right? Inference, and again, another inference question. Mildred must have been Corcoran's sister, one of Corcoran's teachers, Corcoran's future wife, or a high school and college girlfriend. Do you guys remember hearing about Mildred? Or do you want to go
D.
back? D, yes, she was the one who followed him to the, well, he said he didn't know if she followed him or he followed her, but they ended up after high school going to the same junior colleges, which are like community colleges. So it would be D. Now, this is a detail which you could find in the text. Which of the following was Clarence's reason for helping Corcoran with his US government test? So that's the one where it was a blue book test and you had to write essays. That was the whole test. You got some prompts and you had to write essays. So, which of these is the correct answer about that? Why would that guy help him? A, he wanted a date with Corcoran's sister. B, he wanted to show Corcoran how smart he was. C, he needed the money that Corcoran was going to pay him. Or D, he wanted to help his friend.
A.
A is correct. He wanted a date with his sister. So it was a fair trade, as he said in the text. Detail, where did Corcoran finally receive teaching that addressed his reading disability? So was it A, at an evening class at a nearby elementary school, B, at a public library, C, at a community adult learning center, D, at a class offered by a community college?
C.
See,
Yeah, that one's a little tricky because he kind of had to go to a public library to find out the information, but then it was at, I think it was at C.
yeah,
We could go back and look to make sure, but he said it was in
it
another
was,
town. So, Carlsbad Library Literacy Program, maybe it was at a library. Let me see. No, it's an adult learning center, Carlsbad's Adult Learning Center. So he went to the library to get the information and it ended up being there. So we're down here, right? 8. Where did Kokora, oh no, that's the one we just answered. Adult Learning Center. Inference. A cat burglar is most likely someone who, he mentions cat burglars and then he mentions a movie about two thieves, right? So what is a cat burglar? Someone who steals valuable pedigreed animals for resale. Someone who is a glamorous movie star kind of thief. Someone who enters quietly without being noticed to take what he or she wants. Someone who specializes in stealing answers to tests and quizzes.
C.
Did you say
go
C?
ahead. See,
Yes, C is correct. So cat, because they're quiet, right? So they can sneak in and a cat is also very agile, right? They can get into places that are hard to get into and take what they want without being noticed. So this one, to pass Corcoran's United States government final, which of the following did he and Clarence do? So that's the one where with the blue book test. A, they stole a locked file cabinet and got a locksmith to open it. They passed questions and answers through an open window. Clarence quizzed him repeatedly until he was able to memorize the answers. They climbed into a second-story window to steal the test.
B.
B, yeah, that's the one where he had to write essays. So he had somebody, he sat next to the window and he passed it outside. That was probably a first floor situation where they didn't have screens. So, true, false here now. Inference question. Corcoran was plagued by worry that his reading disability would be discovered.
True.
True. He talks about his anxiety early on there. Sorry, it's not letting me go. Here in this paragraph. But I certainly lived on the edge of anxiety. Would my mask be yanked off? Would I be humiliated and degraded before my family and peers? He even kept it hidden from his family. So that's sad. We are here. Detail question. According to the article, even children with mild reading problems are often less happy than their peers. And that's right in that same section that I just pointed out. So that's a literal question. We could find that answer. Does anyone remember, or do you want me to go back?
True.
Yes,
True.
that's true. Yeah, he's actually stated that in there. Author's purpose. The author's primary purpose is to inspire others through his personal story. Do you think that's true or false?
True.
True. He's not just trying to brag about how he got a college degree by cheating, right? He's not being obnoxious or arrogant. He's talking about a problem that he had and how he finally got around to dealing with it, and got help that he needed. And it sounds like he's doing it to help others who are in the same situation. Inference, Corcoran dated the former Miss El Paso because he was in love with her.
False.
False.
So yeah, he doesn't say whether or not he was in love with her, but he does say she was very smart. And so by that, we can infer that he sought out somebody who could really help him get that college degree by their intelligence and skill. And he had learned that, especially, I think, being a man, back in that time period, women would often um, do things for men that they loved, like do their laundry, that kind of a thing. So I think he knew she would help him in that aspect. Detail, Corcoran earned an honest A in mathematics practice teaching. So you might not remember that one. So you teachers have
That's
to
true.
go. Yes. Um, he was good at it. He said somewhere in here, and that was the one place where he actually earned the grade that he got without having to read or write, because he just had to teach math and he could do that. So build your vocabulary. These are vocabulary questions, just like you had on your midterm. So what do you think the meaning of intermittently? He taught school. He's talking about his father. For 40 years, he taught school intermittently.
B.
Occasionally, yes, that's correct. So I found that when I read that, I thought, I worked two teaching jobs. Like, how was he able to just work every now and then and support an entire family? I thought that was kind of funny, but I think things were different back then. Social competence is lower. So I'm trying to remember what part of the text that was in, but they give us, they say line 18. Maybe we can go back and look at it. Okay, there's 15, 16, 17, 18. Also, research indicates that social competence is lower for reading impaired boys. So, social, being able to talk to other people and say the right things, right? Read other people. So, what do you think competence means? If we go back here, is it A, proficiency, B, interest, C, popularity, or D, activity?
A.
A is correct. Proficiency, being able to do it, right? Having those skills that you need to do it. 3, well into my masquerade, right? Which is a kind of figurative language there. In 20, on line 23, does masquerade mean school years? B, athletic activities, C, studies, or D, cover up?
D.
D, right? Masquerade is to wear a mask. So he's covering up his inability to read. 4, people thought of illiterates. So are illiterates people who are not truthful, people who cannot read, people who do not go to college, or D, people who are unpleasant? So the first one, A, is not truthful, B, cannot read, C, don't. B, yes, B is correct, James. People who cannot read. Well done. 5 is about the word adept. So more adept at learning. In that context, does adept mean A, clumsy, B, resistant, C, skilled, or D, pleased?
C.
C,
Skilled.
yep, C is correct. Well done. My covert actions. Does the word covert mean in this context A, secret, B, illegal? Yep, A is correct. Well done. 7, every ounce of cunning. We're looking at the word cunning. Is that A, stupidity, B, strength, C, help, or D, cleverness?
D.
D is correct. Cleverness. Well done. 8, an intentional ploy. So does ploy mean A, insult, B, mistake, C, plan, D, kindness?
C.
C is correct. Well done. 9, adept at subterfuge. C is correct. So we have A. A was crime, B, academics, C, trickery, and D, acting. So remember, subterfuge is kind of a negative connotation. It's you're getting what you want, but you're doing it by being deceitful. So trickery works best. 10, small, inconspicuous office. Does inconspicuous mean A, well decorated, B, not easily noticed, C, elegant, or D, ground floor?
D.
Um,
I
no,
mean B. I'm sorry.
yes, B is correct. Yep, not
Sorry.
easily noted. No, believe me, say the wrong thing all the time. So B, not easily noticed is the correct word. So let me see. I think this is the next one. So I think we're done that one. We could do, let me see what time it is. It looks like we only have 12 minutes left, so I don't think we can do, oh wait, there's more. No, we did that. This is something different. Okay, so I think that's all we can do tonight. So does anybody have any questions? So there is a quiz. Let me stop sharing this screen. And actually, I should continue sharing the screen and show you in on our Brightspace. Module 6, you'll find a quiz 6-1. 6, the first number stands for the module, and then the second number stands for the assignment. So this is the first and only assignment in module 6. So it's our 6th quiz on chapter 7. So you want to take that one. I don't know why it's not loading here on my screen.
Wait, so do we have 2 quizzes we have to take? Or is it just one?
It's just one. Because you took the other one last week. Or 2 weeks ago, really, because we had spring break. It's not loading or my computer's doing something weird, but it should be on there. And it's available till, is tonight the 12th? Yeah. If I could see it, I could give you a little bit better information. Let me just go in through quizzes and find it that way. There we go. Yeah, so I'm gonna leave it open till Sunday. Right now it ends tonight, but I'll leave it open for you till Sunday. So I'll change that end date to the 15th. Okay, save and close. So if you can't take it tonight, take it before Sunday. But since we just worked with it, it might be easier to do it tonight. And don't forget, you get 2 attempts and you can use your notes. If you go into under content, module 6, the lecture notes are right here. So you can use these if you'd like to, where you take it, or the slides if that's easier for you. The slides are not as detailed as the other, but they do have a lot of information on them. So you can use either or. Any questions about anything? I'll give you a little preview of next week. Next week, we're going to look at chapter 8, and you will have just one quiz on chapter 8. We're also going to do chapter 9, though, but you're not going to have a quiz on chapters 9 and 10. We're going to stop taking quizzes after chapter 8 will be the last one. But we'll do chapters 8 and 9 next week. And then in module 8, we'll finish up chapter 10. And then the week after, module 9, we're going to start research. We're going to do a little research project and use the library, learn about using the library's databases. So we'll be done with the chapters in the book by the time we get to module 9. Any questions about anything? You'll need the book, The Lovely Bones, I think by module 10. Yeah, module 10, you'll have to have read some of these chapters, so maybe get it by module 9. Or I might just be doing an introduction then. Yeah, I think I'm just doing an introduction in module 10. So get it by module 10 if you don't already have it. And that's it. So if you don't have any questions, you are free to go. Otherwise, you can stay on here and ask me any questions that you have.
Have a good night.
Have a good night. Bye, guys. Bye, James.
Bye.
I hope you have a great weekend.
Me too.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.